Coming to you live from Avion here in the foothills of the French Alps. In a few moments from now, U.S. President Donald Trump is going to be here, and then officially we will have what is the G7 dinner, which will kick off the G7 meetings. Ahead of his arrival here in Avion, of course, the U.S. President announced the fact that the U.S. and Iran have signed a deal, and that the signing ceremony will happen this Friday in Geneva here in Switzerland, not very far away. I want to go across to someone who has been tracking the Iran story and the Iran deal for a number of years now. Ambassador John Bolton is the former National Security Advisor to the United States government. Thank you very much, Ambassador Bolton, for joining us. So we finally have a degree of confirmation from the U.S. president as well as from the Iranian authorities, including the likes of Mr. Ghalibaf, that U.S. and Iran have arrived at a deal. What do you make of the contours of this deal? And the big question everybody's asking, will it last?
Well, Trump's obvious objective was to get the Strait of Hormuz open, get Gulf oil back into international markets. That's what he's touting as the chief objective of the deal. We really don't know too much beyond that. And until we see the document, I think it'd be a mistake because we're hearing such different things from Iran on the one hand and Trump on the other. One interesting aspect is the deal won't actually be signed until Friday because, as Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz, who's one of the chief mediators, said, they still have more technical talks to do. So the devil's always in the details, and we'll just see what actually happens. I think this is a big victory for Iran. I think it gets them what they want, which is the lifting of the U.S. blockade. Whether it gets anything else other than getting more oil exports out of the Gulf, I think very much remains to be seen.
The one concern has also been around Israel. Already in the last few hours, we've seen voices from the far-right coalition supporters or partners of Bibi Netanyahu's government saying that they will not honor this deal, Israel will not honor this deal, and they will attack Lebanon. Do you see between now and Friday Israel further sort of attacking Lebanon, and there, as a result of which the agreement might not come through?
I think that what Iran is trying to do is drive a deeper wedge between Netanyahu and Trump. So I would not be surprised if over the next several days, Hezbollah increase their attacks against Israeli forces in Lebanon to see if they can produce some kind of larger response. I think the whole question of the Lebanon front in this broader Middle Eastern war remains the most uncertain. And I think in this case, all those who read Israeli public opinion says Netanyahu has enormous support to continue the struggle against Hezbollah.
But the problem is that Trump doesn't quite buy that. I think Trump, and it would be fair to say that Trump and Netanyahu are not on the same page. Trump desperately wants this deal, as you said a moment ago. Netanyahu, not so much. How does one resolve this? I mean, it's very rare that the leaders of America and Israel are not on the same page on something as important as ending this war.
Well, I think they'll try to hash it out behind the scenes. But as I say, this is a tactical opportunity for Iran to split Israel and the United States. That always pays dividends for them, and I think they'll continue to do it. But also, I mean, let's bear in mind, Hezbollah is an arm in the proxy network of terrorists that Iran has set up over the years. So they're very worried that if Israel keeps up the pressure, Hezbollah's own situation in Lebanon will become much more difficult, especially given that the government of Israel and the real government of Lebanon, have actually begun negotiating on their common objective of removing Hezbollah. So this is a very important portfolio for the Lebanese, Israel, and Iran, quite apart from the struggle over the Gulf.
I do also want to ask you about the India question. Prime Minister Modi will be meeting with President Trump in a couple of days' time here in Avion. Of course, this is the first time they'll be meeting since February of 2025 when they met at the White House, and a lot has happened. You know, the tariff issue, the fact that the interim trade agreement has not been achieved yet. Then, of course, most recently, we've seen the killing of the 3 Indian sailors. What do you think the nature of the conversations will be when these two men meet in a couple of days' time here in Avion?
Well, I hope they'll consider the larger strategic implications of all this, and in particular, what it means for China's presence in the Middle East and in South and East Asia, as China clearly on a campaign to expand its influence all along its periphery. I hope on the trade issue, I hope Prime Minister Modi is persuasive to get Trump to reduce the tariffs. I think it's the biggest mistake probably that the Trump administration has made. I think it's harmful to the United States, harmful to our trading partners, increasingly unpopular in the United States as the tariffs push up prices and exacerbate inflation. So I suspect probably trade and the question of the war in the Gulf will be the two top issues.
I also do want to ask you in terms of how this story will play out, at least as far as the sailors is concerned, because there's been a lot of outrage, a lot of anger in the Indian street. There have been posters of Donald Trump that have been torn up as well. And the feeling is that Mr. Modi's government hasn't, emphasized strongly enough or pushed back strongly enough against the fact that these Indian sailors were killed. How do you expect him to bring up this issue, and how do you expect President Trump, if at all, to respond to it?
Well, I'm sure Prime Minister Modi will bring it up, and the answer is that the ship, the captain was given instructions not to proceed toward a port in Iran because of our blockade. And when he didn't do it, we fired into the engine room of the ship, which is when I think the casualties took place. I don't recall now what the flag of the ship was, but probably one of the flags of convenience that are part of the dark fleet of ships that evade sanctions all over the world, not just with respect to Iran, but Russia, Venezuela, and others. So it's this dark fleet is an issue, I think, for all of us. It's not a good thing to have out there. I understand the importance to Prime Minister Modi, but I think what he should get from Trump is a polite reception to his ideas, and then a statement that we did this in not obviously directed at India, but in aid of the blockade.
There's also a perception here in India, especially in the last few months, and it's been sort of aggravated or exacerbated after Trump's visit to Beijing last month, that a grand bargain has been cut between Beijing and Washington, and Trump and Xi Jinping seem to be smoking the peace pipe, and therefore Trump has deprioritized things like security in the Asia-Pacific, the Quad, even Taiwan for that matter. How should India view these developments?
Well, I think it's fair for India to be worried about it. I'm worried about it. I'm worried about Taiwan. I think we've known for a long time Trump has this fascination with authoritarian figures, whether Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong-un, even Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. I don't think that has anything to do with American strategic national interest. I think it has to do with Trump's view that all international affairs are seen through the prism of the personal relationships of the leaders, which is clearly not the case. So it is a troubling time, and I think the potential implications of this deal on the Gulf, just announced with Iran, could give China ideas about further asserting what it sees as its hegemony along its periphery to the detriment of everybody in the region.
Also, what happens to the Middle East itself? How does the security dynamic of the Middle East change once this war concludes? Because Iran has demonstrated that A, it can open and shut the Strait of Hormuz at will, and B, it can attack American military bases in any of these Gulf Arab countries.
Well, I think that's one of the major flaws of this deal, to the extent we understand its specifics. I think we should not have agreed to anything until we had forced the strait open, keep the blockade on the Iranian oil, let the Gulf Arab oil come out. Obviously, Trump didn't do that. The best I can say is that Trump is not moved by any strategic analysis here. He wants the global price of oil down so that the price of gasoline at the pump in America will go down, so that it alleviates economic concern and doesn't have such a negative impact on the chances of the Republican Party in November. That's the sole focus of this deal.
And one final word. I mean, obviously, he's very obsessed about portraying that this deal is better than the JCPOA deal in 2015, which Obama got. How does he spin that?
with characteristic optimism that he could convince people of almost anything. I don't think it's going to fly. If this were such a good deal, they'd be eager to get the details out as quickly as possible. I'm very worried the Iranian spin on what the terms of the deal are may be more accurate than Trump's spin. It will cost him politically if that turns out to be the case.
All right, Ambassador John Bolton, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.